Awesome. Welcome everyone. Irwin live. Awesome. Good morning. Thank you for joining.
Yeah, it's great to be here. I'm in Madison, Wisconsin. Lots of snow and very, very cold today.
Oh, wonderful. I don't know. I have mixed feelings about it.
I hear you.
Welcome everyone. In our series here, I have with me Irwin Hipsman, four-time marketing leader. He has designed and rolled out multiple tier customer marketing programs at companies like Forrester, Nextink, and Brainshark. I think I've had great conversations with him on customer marketing, and I'm very excitedly looking forward to this conversation. Maybe we can kick it off here with a quick introduction about you and your own words.
Yeah, so I've been in B2B SaaS my entire career. I was in sales for a long time, but then I pivoted to customer success. And then most recently, past 4 places I've been at, I've been involved with customer marketing. I really enjoy that relationship with customers. And so I've started up 4 customer marketing practices. The first 2 were your classic, advocacy, references, reviews, things like that. And then the last 2, particularly at Forrester, I really pivoted over to what today people would call lifecycle marketing. 5 years ago when I started that pivot, there was no name for it. And then last year I left Forrester and I decided I really didn't have it in me to do a 5th startup of a customer marketing practice. And I decided to go out on my own, start a company called Repetitos, and that's how I met Boomerang.
How did origin customer marketing and why this came about, what gap it solved, right? And how does it build past few years?
Yeah, so I think there's 3 sort of legs on the stool around the customer, post-sales customer side of the house. Pre-sales is a whole other story, which we can talk about some other time. First is customer experience. And that's a well-known discipline. You can probably get a degree in university in customer experience. It's been around a long time. There's methodologies around that. A lot of it starts at B2C, customer experience, but it's evolved into B2B. Then probably about, really with Salesforce, probably about 20 years ago that started customer success, because the whole theory behind SaaS is that it's all about the renewal. You don't make money on your first year when you sign a client if you're a B2B SaaS. Second year, you probably break even. The third year is when you really start making money and the annuity kicks in. And so the cost of sales is so high that it became clear to a company like Salesforce, which was a leader, that we need to have a group of people that really focused upon the renewal. And that's the concept of customer success managers. And then what happened is every customer success manager became their own mini customer marketing department. They would do their own user groups with their customers. They'd have their own newsletters. They would do their own mailings. And it's just not sustainable and everyone's messaging different messages and it looks different. Some are better and some are worse. And so it became pretty clear that we can't have every CSM becoming a mini customer marketing department. Let's create a customer marketing department. And sort of the big evolution I found is when I was in customer advocacy, I had one-to-one relationships with customers. I still have friends today that, I was their CSM, they were my client 10 years ago, because you develop that one-to-one relationship. And a lot of customer marketers are really driven by that ability to have a relationship. Once you get into lifecycle marketing, you lose that one-to-one. So, I'll talk to customers, in a lifecycle, marketing world, but I'm not servicing them. I'm not answering their questions. So it's a very different relationship. So the difference is CSMs are one-to-one and customer marketing became the one-to-many. So, who is that individual or individual within the organization that will put out the newsletter to all customers, that will, develop user group meetings, that will think about customer communications, big picture, think about talking to other parts of the organization about who else needs to communicate with customers. Let's make sure that, that everybody's in sync communicating with customers. So it's a much newer discipline. And the other thing that I see that in customer marketing is that it used to be it was 100% people doing advocacy and nobody doing sort of life cycle marketing. Now it's about a year and a half ago, it was 80-20. Now it's about 75%, 25% of those advocacy customer marketing who are pure advocates versus life cycle marketing. We can talk a little bit about more of that in a moment.
Yeah. So where is customer marketing headed in the next few months and years?
Yeah, it was interesting. I just had, when I'm in Madison, I live in Boston, but I come out to Madison to visit my kids. And there's a group of customer marketers in Madison that we get together 2 or 3 times a year. And one of them just told me this interesting story that he left his current company, went to another company. He took a pay cut, but the reason why he did that, he's early to mid-career, so he could do that. The reason why he did that was that he saw what was happening with customer lifecycle marketing becoming more and more important within this larger customer marketing community. And he realized he really needed to learn how to be a customer lifecycle marketing. So he takes what he knows as a customer advocacy person and then adds what he's going to learn as a customer lifecycle marketer. And he thinks it's going to be, good for his career. So that's one thing I'm seeing is either companies are adding more lifecycle, adding that role, lifecycle marketer, or they're asking their current customer marketing people or customer advocacy people to start pivoting, learn about, lead gen, learn about some of the things that are outside of that one-to-one relationship that they fostered, but take what you've learned from understanding customers. Because the problem is, I've worked at companies, I'm going to get passionate about this. So many marketers don't understand customers. So my classic story is they want to send an email out to prospects and customers about a webinar.
Yeah.
And they'll send the same email to both. It's like, no. You can't do that. A prospect email is a prospect email. When you send a customer prospect email, they go, why do they talk to me like they don't know who I am? Oh, we'll just change one word. We'll say, for clients instead of for prospects. No, it's deeper than that. Think about what would resonate with a customer who knows, and how do you communicate with them? So a lot of my friends in marketing just don't understand how to talk to customers, and that's what that customer advocate person brings in when they move into lifecycle marketing. They understand how to speak to those people. So that's one trend. The other trend is that, I hate to say this, I'm going to be a little controversial, most companies do not understand customer marketing. They think of it as it's references and reviews, and things like that, and videos and studies. That's the old model. That's the customer advocacy. That's 1.0. We're talking about 2.0. And CMOs have had so much taken away from them. Product marketing, often doesn't live in marketing. Pricing doesn't live in marketing. So many things have been taken away from the CMOs, and they're sort of left with branding and communications. Yeah. So there's nobody in the company who really understands. The CMO is the person who should really understand customer marketing, but it's been taken off of their plate. I mean, it may live in marketing, but the CMO doesn't think about that. So there's no sort of almost natural advocate and that's another trend. There's no natural advocate in many companies. And so what I'm starting to see in some companies who get it, they're just doing amazing things, but that's maybe 10% of the companies. 90% don't get it. And what they do, the other trend is they tend to hire junior people. All the customer marketing and advocacy is references, reviews, and more videos. So what do I need a director level for? Let me just get a manager level in. And so that's something that a lot of the people I've talked to who are looking for work, they say all the positions are junior positions, and they're asking me to take a 30% pay cut. And I don't know if I can do that because companies are thinking of it as not strategic, as more videos, things like that. And the last trend is I'm seeing some senior, director, senior director, VP level people at companies leaving their company because there's nowhere to go, there's no room to grow within the company, and they're just getting frustrated. So they're going to other companies, trying to find that 10% who get it. Because they're in one of the 90% who don't get it. So a lot of trends there, some very positive. I think the trends toward life cycle is very positive. Some, a bit negative.
Yeah, no, totally. I think, Irwin, when you said that, and I know you said that was controversial, so I'm going to add a little more controversy on top of that, right? So having, through the last several years that we have spoken to customer marketing people, both as a company as well as in my own personal network, right? What I've always realized is, I think the way customer marketing functions usually think is a lot aligned with customer success goals, like thinking about it from, upsell, cross-sells at best, or more than that, just, at NPS and all those kind of things, right? Customer events and all that, versus more marketing. I mean, what I'm trying to say is, I think I've always pushed to understand, hey, when you say customer marketing, are you looking to have pipeline goals? Is it more closer to marketing and demand generation and, other elements of marketing that you're going to take over? So Have you, like in yours, between what you have already rolled out as programs in different companies, as well as obviously your own conversations with other peers, right? Like, how do you look at this from a alliance standpoint? Like, you think there is a future where there's like there's a stronger association with like pipeline generated or influenced, for the customer marketing function, and like, yeah, tell us a bit more about that actually.
Yeah, a few things. One thing that I've seen in customer success is that the sort of the Achilles heel of customer success is it doesn't scale. So the rule of thumb used to be for every 20 customers, we add a CSM. Well, at some point, you've got 50 CSMs,
Right.
and with different skill sets, and you just can't scale that. So the idea is, well, let's do tech touch or digital customer success.
Yeah.
Let's automate everything. Let's cut back. Let's go from 50 to 10 CSMs, and then automate the hell out of it, and just send all these nurture campaigns all day long. And frankly, that's when I was at Forrester. That's why I was let go. I mean, I'm going to be honest here. Is that got all customer marketing? That we can move all that to digital customer success. They'll automate those communications. We don't need somebody to do that. We'll just automate it. Customers know when you're automating things.
Of course.
They get it, and they realize I just lost my CSM, and I'm getting all these automated communications. In the end, there's nobody in customer marketing who understands what's going on and can communicate with me, even a one-to-many type of situation. Where I think customer marketing can help on the revenue side, CSMs are really well positioned on the upsell. For example, if you're a seat model and the client's at 90% capacity, that's easy to do, or relatively easy to do, because they bought it, they just need to buy more seats. So they're perfectly positioned to do upsell. I think where customer marketing can help is on the cross-sell. A lot of times, CMOs will talk about cross-sell and upsell in one sentence, and they're very, very, very different notions. Cross-sell is much more like a new logo sale than an upsell. And when people conflate these things, they're doing everybody a disservice. But where customer marketing, and we'll talk about a little bit deeper at the end, there are people who will, 20% of employees leave a company every year, either voluntary or on their own, and a very high percentage of them end up in new companies.
Yeah.
I'm working on a survey right now, and it'll be in the follow-up email to do the survey, and we can talk about that. But one of the things that I asked in the survey, it's around the health of customer contact databases, is, do you have an alumni program? Do you keep track of those the employees at your customers who leave, and where do they go? And only 30% of the people said, yes, we have a program to keep track of those people and nurture them and market them. Everyone else says, well, when they're ready to buy, they'll give us a call. So here are these marketing organizations that spend all this time marketing to people who are never going to buy, nurturing them over and over and over again. They're never going to buy. And here are these warm leads, somebody who used your product. They may have even been an advocate, but they use your product. They're now at a different company, similar role, and you're just waiting for them to call you. So that's a type of program that I think a customer marketer could really lean into and help keep track of those people and send those leads over to sales. And we'll talk a little bit more as a case study towards the end as to whether you call it an alumni program or a repeat sales to former customer program. But, we all know, and that's sort of one of the beauties of SaaS, is that probably 20 to 30% business is from repeat customers.
Yeah, no, 100%. As someone who started...
One last story. I ran into a guy at a conference. He was an 11-time Forrester customer.
Wow. No, wow.
And they still wait for him to call. Someone like that's Hall of Fame.
I was just going to say that calls for two things. One is obviously the championship, and second is how frequently people move jobs.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, jokes apart, as someone who started a company on this, 100%, I think we do believe that past relationships and, past experiences that you deliver to the customer is obviously a number one signal for them to go buy you in your company. And I think, there's absolutely a lot more that companies can do and that's also obviously something that we do, right? So when we speak to our customers or the kind of companies that we work with, Irwin, what connects them together is kind of similar to what you said, right? What is traditionally called target account selling, right? Essentially, you have a small set of accounts wherein you want to kind of build your business. So there's a lot of land, expand, cross-sell, upsell, and what becomes really exciting is that people tend to move, and especially, more likely than not, they tend to move within circles. You know what I'm saying? Like the likelihood of somebody going into another company that you could possibly sell to is relatively much higher than what you might expect, right? And again, I think, like we'll talk about the data piece here, but I think where we see, or where we kind of come in with a lot of these things is what you call the alumni program, right? Find people who, but it's not just finding, right? It's also about how do you kind of activate that? How do you kind of, you see, because it's not the database, right? But again, where I did want to kind of go from here, just to kind of, before we talk a little more about what Boomerang does and how we work and all that, is let's talk about the data challenge, right? Because I think a lot of companies that we work with obviously want to do this, and there's obviously high intent, but I think the biggest challenge is the underlying data, right? So I'll give you a very classic example. It was remarkable. So we recently signed on a customer, great folks, I think they have, according to public, pre-IPO companies, so they have like tens of thousands of customers, so perfect for customer marketing, And the big reason they signed up with us is that they found that on an average, their customer accounts have 1.1 contacts in their CRM. Think about it. That's crazy. Like I'm saying, 1.1 is like, it's nowhere close to where it should be, and which means that you really don't know who you're going to market to, So, and I know you work with a lot more customers, especially on this topic of contact data, customer data, right? So tell us a bit more about, what's been your experience and how are you helping with some of those things?
Yeah, I mean, one thing on the I just mentioned that survey that I have some preliminary numbers for.
Yeah.
I gave one. Another preliminary number is when I asked people, how would you rate the cleanliness, usability, and overall health of and trust in? Because do other people in the organization trust the database? If they want to send a communication of trust in your customer contact database, I gave this a 1 to 7 scale, and only 12% of the people said it was a 5, 6, or 7. Which means 88% of the people says a 1, 2, 3, or 4. And when the report comes out, I'm going to go deeper into the numbers. But very few people say the customer contact database is healthy, and everyone says, "Yeah, we know it's a problem, and it's on the back burner," because it's one of these things that everybody owns it. Whenever you hear something that everybody owns, that means nobody owns it. 100%. Or they say the CSMs own it. It's like, well, the CSM might, for one person in each account that they talk to, might keep that clean. But what I've seen in the companies I work with, they generally have more like 6 or 7 people per account. Those could be users and things like that. And so when it comes to data, I look at 3 things. One is there's the really simple stuff. There's what I call the eyeball stuff. Do you have first name and last name reversed? Do you have people's email address in their last name? I mean, you could just literally do a pull down and say, or you could drop into Excel and use Copilot and say, find me all the email addresses that are in the wrong field, whatever it is. So there's, because you're, human, some salesperson has data entered it when it was a prospect, and that information lives forever. So there's that simple stuff, and that's easy. But then there's the title. So when that first person met you, filled out a form 5 years ago, they were a manager. Today they're a VP. Nobody's ever bothered to clean that up. If you want to cross-sell, you're not going to cross-sell to managers. You're going to cross-sell to VPs. So you need to know who are those people who've got more senior titles. Then the location, and location is really important because, during COVID, people moved, and people move all the time. And in the past, people, you thought, the person just lives where the headquarters is. Well, that's probably true for 50% of the people. But think about in the organization, who needs that information? Field marketing would love to know, where people are at so they can invite them to the appropriate events. Legal would want to make sure that you're following GDPR and California's privacy regulations and Canada's and Germany's and all that. So there are a lot of people in the organization who really do depend upon the health of the database. I think that's the mistake that everyone makes is, well, it's only CSMs or it's only customer marketing, who cares? This touches a lot of people. And then, with the title, it obviously touches sales because, if you hand off a cross-sell opportunity, okay, who are all the senior people at these companies, and you can identify who they are, that really helps, the account managers, do cross-sell things. The other part is, so that's sort of that level 1 data. I think I just talked to a client yesterday who said, I told him, we can track how many followers people have on LinkedIn. Yeah. And I could just see them, the brain thing is like, yeah, we should add that in. We should create a field in our CSM to start keeping track of that. Because if you want to generate advocates, well, somebody with 100 followers is probably less likely to be an advocate. Someone with 10,000 followers is probably more likely to be an advocate. And then one other thing is I've talked to clients who They say, yeah, when we first meet somebody, we'll get their Gmail address. And then when they become a client, we'll replace it with their corporate address. It's like, no, don't do that. Save the Gmail address because they're going to be gone at some point and you want to be able to communicate with them. So that second level of data is to go to your CRM team and say, can we have 2 fields for email address? And they'll push back and say, no, you don't need it. That's crazy. And then you explain to them, the reason why we need it is that when that person leaves, how are we going to communicate with them? We send email to them? Yeah, we can, but that's not the most effective way. Adding a link field for the LinkedIn URL. Again, they'll probably say, what do you need that for? Explain it to them, and they go, oh yeah, now I get it. So that's that second level of data is sort of the not obvious stuff, not the title, not the employer, but it's like, it's their Gmail address. Keep the...
No, 100%. I think that reminded me of something, right? So it's a very simple, what I'm trying to say is where things get stuck are very simple compared to what you said. So one of our customers wanted to kind of have a gifting program, when somebody moves job or such a customer milestone. Now, after COVID, because of remote working, you just don't know that because earlier people used to go to office. So it was very easy to know, okay, you send it to the corporate address, you got people. Where I'm going with that is, like a lot of customer marketing programs have a heavy dependency on the data. So like where we kind of work with our customers is completeness and coverage of your contact data with customers, right? For example, sometimes these are just in different systems. Obviously there's some amount of it in support ticketing system. There's something in your customer success tool. There's something in your CRM. And like you said, some of it is manually entered, some of it is automated. So I think what we do with our audit as a first step is to make sure that, hey, first of all, you have everyone you need to have, right? If you have, do you have them tagged the right way, right? And also then it comes down to being able to say, can you eventually, can you model? So this is the 5-part framework. I think you and I have spoken briefly about it, like it's a 5-part framework, right? So the first is get your data right, because without that, you can't do much, right? So get your customer data right. So it involves all the people, that, completeness, accuracy, recency of information, all of those good stuff, right? Then I guess it comes down to modeling advocacy, which is in the lines of what you just said, which is that, hey, and advocacy is both sides, right? Like it's about how much they like you as well as how vocal they can get, right? So somebody with 1,000 followers is obviously more vocal and has an opinion, hopefully probably is a content creator, is active on LinkedIn, right? Et cetera, et cetera. So obviously it's also as much important that that's also the person who really likes you and has had a good experience, right? So I think modeling that, and there are the other factors. I think some of our customers use things like NPS or, like, for example, buying rules, like stuff from...
Or engagement, participating in webinars, things like that.
Exactly, right? So I think that's the other thing, right? So you kind of bring together, create that advocacy model, so to say, right? And then the third part, if you recall, right? Like I think this was something that you mentioned, which is like, then it comes to nurturing, So I think a lot of the times you realize that there's this perfect candidate. I think you were giving the example of somebody who's got these followers, right? I think perfect candidate, but hey, we've not touched this person in like ages, So then it comes to nurturing with a deliberate set of perspective on that, right? And then activation, right? That I think is the real part, right? Like now that when the time comes, so something that we're, in terms of what we do with the job change tracking, champion tracking pieces, activation comes when they move to a role or get promoted or move to a company, right? So the activation. And the last part is interesting. I don't know if we have spoken. I would love to understand how you think about it. Is then on top of it, then there is that sense of a continuum around it, like some way to kind of, it's not a once and done thing, like, how this continues. There's some kind of a, I don't want to use like community / like loyalty kind of thing where you're kind of, so yeah, I think some kind of a framework to basically say, hey, here is how you would build. Like, this is in line with our conversations, but would love to kind of get a couple of, like additional thoughts on this from you as well, right?
Yeah, I think about I come almost more from that very last step, which is the activation.
Yeah.
And, there are probably 7 or 8 different programs that a customer marketing person could initiate. So there are customer advisory boards. Yeah. There are user group meetings. There's awards programs. There's newsletters. Those are some of the key ones. And what's interesting is when I see a job description, they want all those things. And it's like, you can't do them all. So, what are the most important ones to do that will get, to whatever the goals are for the year. And, let's pick 1 or 2 of them.
Yeah.
So if it's determined, when I was at one company, they said to me, you can do anything you want, Irwin, a blank field, and you decide you're the customer marketing guy. But if you don't get us Gartner Customer Choice Award, you've been a failure. So you get that gives you license to do anything you want. So that was actually good because I knew that was the rules of the game. So I made sure I got in customer choice. You learn how to work the system. And then I could do the 2 or 3 other programs. And the one we focused in on was user groups. Because to me, that is probably the most powerful form of activation, where you have them in, if you have enough customers in different cities, and that's where knowing location is really important, because you can look and say, okay, in Chicago and Atlanta, for some reason, we have a lot of customers. Let's do those user group meetings there. And that's when, customers start talking to each other. And that's where you get, cross-sell. They bring somebody with them. That's where you get, that person leaves and goes to another company. They've got, they have very positive relations to you. So to me, that's sort of that flow. But the activation to me is the most important, because that's when you're working with customers. But if you don't do the foundation, it's very hard to do the activation.
100%, 100%. I think the fact that this data and using this data is so difficult, but the moment we have all of these in place, I think customer marketing can be very powerful, right? I think the kind of things that it can accomplish is massive. I think, I'm sure not just me, but the audience, right, is waiting to hear a little more about some of the programs that you rolled out. What was the experience? I know we have a couple of other things that we want to cover before the end of the webinar, but let's actually take this time to, hear from you on what are some of the best things that you have.
Yeah, so this is from Forrester. So one of the things that, because I was more on the lifecycle side, and I spent a lot of time with the data, I realized there's all these people who are no longer, they've left the company. How do we, right now, the only way we know is if CSM tells us that they've left company, or somebody's gone into the Salesforce record and said, left company.
Yeah.
And we were only able to find probably 30% of and my hypothesis was that, yes, we can find some people who left company, but we have to start using some technology. So the good news is that we were able to probably find half of them manually, but the other half we had to use technology to like a boomerang, to identify those people who had left. And so we found about 400 people. So there's a waterfall. It's the same way you have a waterfall math with lead generation. There's a waterfall math with that. Yeah. So of the 400 people we identified who left their company in the past, let's say 3 to 6 months, I believe it was, some landed, some retired. So, that's over. Some landed and some didn't land. So, those people who landed, those leads got handed off to the BDRs. At that point, I wipe my hand clean, because there's a process that the company has when they get a lead. Now, the BDRs knew this was a former customer. It wasn't just a prospect. So they could go into they could go and look at the utilization. They can say, did they land at a, for example, let's say Forrester didn't sell to government. I don't know. And they landed at government. So they weren't, they weren't going to be pursued. But the waterfall math was, of the 400 people that we found who had left the company, about 200 of them had gone to new companies, and 200 of them had not landed yet. Of the 200 gone to new companies, 100 of them landed at ICP. So those are the people that started going and reached out to. And I told everybody, I said, this is going to be, we're not going to close any deals in the first 30 days. Give us 6 months to close deals, because what's the normal selling cycle? Yeah, 6 months. Okay, we'll 9 months. We'll get it to 6 months. And within 60 days, we closed 3 significant deals. Now, would these people have bought anyway? Probably. But we probably accelerate their buying by 6 months. So you start adding that up, it becomes real money. And then the people who had not landed yet, we nurtured in a different way. We said, hey, you haven't landed yet. In Forrester's case, we had something to give them, and that's something I'll talk about in a second. We gave them some reports that said, when you're at your job interview, here's sort of the latest research from Forrester. You will be a lot smarter in your job interview. So here's 4 or 5 pieces of content we think would be valuable.
Yeah.
And I think that's the thing that companies need to think about. What is the incentive to give to somebody? So, for example, if you have an annual conference and you charge $500 a ticket, give them a ticket to the conference. You're giving tickets to a lot of people anyway. Or, you can't give them access to the software, because, imagine you have a CRM system. Hey, we're going to give you can use our CRM system. That's not going to work. But what you can give them as an incentive to in particular, for either the people who haven't landed or have landed, because they may need different things. But But think about what you can give them as incentive. That's not a $25 Amazon card. That's meaningful. That speaks to what you have, and it's not a hoodie or something like that. And so that was that process that we went through, and I left, and I assume it's going. I don't know, but one of the other benefits was that we found people who nobody knew had left the company. Mm-hmm. So the CSM say, this person left the company. It's like, I didn't know that. And then they would go, then they would be notified they need to find a new contact. So there are a lot of benefits to keeping track of those people who've left their employer. The number one is, from a revenue perspective, is to develop that repeat sales by former customer contact program. I would suggest a pilot, because it's a lot of moving parts, and that could take a year to get everyone lined up. Let's just do a little pilot that's manual. We'll get the names, we'll give it to the BDR, and then if we see there's value, let's automate the hell out of it.
100%. I think it was interesting. You also had a statistic, like you said earlier, right? So 30% people have an alumni program. I was generally curious from the audience also, if you have a program, please do mention that in the comment section, right? But even coming back to what you said, I think that's plus. I think I really like the part where, I know obviously you could do that at Forrester, but like the meaningfulness of the asset, or the you call it incentive, right? Whatever, to kind of be able to give people something that would actually help them, like thinking about them, as opposed to just, here's an ebook we just published. I mean, you published, but then what's more important is that what the person on the other end cares about, right? So I think that's really cool. Yeah,
we didn't do this because we had content, but I could see creating some content just for that. You've got a lot of content.
Yeah.
Creating content just for that cohort of people, for those people who've left their company. I don't know what that would be, but smart people in the content team could probably figure out what would somebody want that'd be valuable to them.
Got it. We had one question, actually, because we're talking about Forrester, and I know you said you were going to add on to the Forrester scenario as well, right? So just to add to that, I think Christina here asks, what was the initial number in case of the Forrester, of the DB that they started from? What was the number?
Oh, the customer contact database is in the thousands. And I actually did a project. Give you to answer the question different way. I just did a project for a company. So a company said, "Irwin, can you help us clean up our database?"
Yeah.
I worked with with Boomerang, and they gave us 25,000 names, and 4,000 of them had left their employer.
Yeah.
So about 20%, which is what and I've done smaller projects for clients with 1,000 names. Again, that's what we see is about 20% of the people in a given year, and that's what the data tells you. 20% of the people in a given year will leave their company. And so now they've got, this company's got 4,000 names, and they've got to go through it, and they're not going to give sales 4,000 names because some of them are not appropriate, they're too junior, whatever. But, that waterfall math will be probably half of those names will be given over sales. Mm-hmm. Sales will say, well, half of them are not ICP, and that waterfall math will go from there.
Yeah.
I mean, that's something, as I get more and more experience in working with clients on these sort of programs, I'll be able to develop a waterfall math, but it intellectually makes sense that there would be a waterfall. There's not 4,000 hot prospects. There's probably 400 hot prospects.
Yeah, no, 100%. I think we, for the last year and a half that we've been working with customers of Boomerang, right? I think what you just said is hitting home very strongly, because knowing who your ICPs are, who is likely to be a direct buyer, who is likely to be an influencer, or for that matter, being able to, like we discussed earlier, making sure that the people that you're looking at are the right people, your CRM is up to date. I think that's a lot of what we learned in the first few months of working with customers, right? And I think we are betting very heavily on AI as a way to solve a lot of these problems. I mean, in some of our projects as well, right? So we have different AI bots or different virtual agents, if I may, which is looking at these from different angles, right? So you're looking at this as, okay, first of all, how do you understand the business really well, that, you have a title or a group of people and you're able to say, this exactly what you said about that waterfall, right? Or you're able to actually say, these are ICP profiles. This is a likely buyer. This is a likely influencer, so all of the good stuff, right? So there's something around the persona, aspect of it. Then there is the prospecting piece, like I said, the data, keeping it up fresh. Like, we make sure that your champions, when they leave, you get to know them within 2 to 4 weeks window, which means that that's the right window to kind of make sure that you are aware for two reasons, right? Obviously, looking at it from a customer standpoint to de-risk and all that, but as much for looking at it from a pipeline standpoint, saying, okay, where do they land? What is it that they can do for you next place? Or how can you help them for that matter, right? Like as you said. So, and then obviously the relationship, the warm introduction piece, right? So, okay, we also look at other data sets like calendars and other things and say, you know what, the CSM or the AE or the VP of revenue who worked with this particular customer very deeply, is this particular person, let's just say John Doe, right? So instead of your BDRs, like sending out, like you said, like, regular emails, which don't sound any different than what they probably would send otherwise, it'll be much better if this is a warm introduction from someone they already know, right? And then that already, again, going back to what you said, I mean, if you look at from the very famous sales framework, right? Like why change, why as, why now? I think the best thing is that why change is not something you got to kind of teach or educate these people, because obviously they lived it, right? I mean, they have their own stories to tell internally. They have their own ways of explaining why this was the right thing for them in their past job, right? So I think that, to your earlier point, is what cuts down sales cycles, want to increase conversion, but obviously assumes that you're doing all the right things to drive it in the right way. So we're betting big on AI to solve a lot of these problems, and I think we're already showing a lot of impact for our current customers in doing so. We have another question. I mean, I'm kind of taking these questions as we go, as we, so Irwin, this is from Rachel. Rachel asks, if you're setting up a customer marketing at a smaller company that does not have a program, where would you start? Like, what kind of things would you prioritize? I think it's a fantastic question, and I know that a lot of people.
Yeah. I mean, that's what I've done at all the companies. I mean, I start with the database. I spend time cleaning up the database is number one. And obviously, start, meeting people across the organization, but not, yes, you're going to talk to customer success, but I think there are a lot of other people in the organization you should be talking to, particularly on the demand gen side, field marketing, things like that. And then it's coming up with what is that first program we're going to launch. So I spent some time cleaning the database, because if you don't have a clean database, then the program's going to be that much harder. It's like you've got weights, you're a runner on the marathon, you've got weights. So like, take the weights off. And then it's, there are a lot of resources out there. I'm happy to chat with anybody. Oh, here are the different programs that you could launch. What makes sense? What's been done and maybe has failed? What hasn't been done? But if it's customer marketing sort of on the advocacy side, and that's what customers want, it's what the company wants is advocates. Well, how are we going to generate advocates? Yeah, and they're different. For example, like getting marketing people to be advocates is relatively easy. Getting IT people to be advocates is relatively hard.
Yeah,
don't work at a cybersecurity company. Those are the hardest. Government, really hard to get advocates, to develop those programs. So, what type of company? What's the profile of your client? And that's like, is it, do you want more senior people engaged? So it's more of a customer advisory board. Do you want more users engaged? Well, it's more of a user group program. So there's a lot of questions, I would ask to sort of identify, okay, here are the 2 or 3 programs that I think that we should consider. This one has a budget of $10,000. This one has a budget of $100,000. And then, taking that to management and say, here are our choices. Where do we want to put some bets down for, just for the, for this year? And they'll probably pick, well, let's do a newsletter and let's do a cab. Okay. Then we know what our marching orders are.
Brilliant. I really like the part where you say, right, like, what's the goal? And is it like executive engagement? Then you obviously go after, like a advisory board kind of thing. Yeah, 100%. I think if you want to engage admins and, like a power user group, maybe like awards and stuff that you mentioned might be a good way, right? Communities and perfect. Yeah, makes sense. I mean, the idea of executives got me thinking about another question that keeps coming up, right? So in your experience, whether it is at Forrester or any of the other places that, rolled out this program, how did you look at the role of executives in customer marketing? I mean, to what extent did you involve like your VPs and CXOs in this process? And if so, in what capacity?
Yeah, what everybody says is, the sort of the contradiction is that customer marketing, we're communicating with customers all day long, but we don't do a good job telling our own story internally. And, and that's where some bosses get it and some don't. And if you have managers who don't get it, then they're not going to filter that information up to the executive suite. And that's where, what I said earlier, that's where there's some frustration at that senior customer marketers is like, I'm doing good work, but nobody's and I can promote myself all day long, but it's self-promotion. Where's my leader sort of talking about it, promoting, what's going on. So it's really hard because executives got a million things on their plate, and they don't really, a lot of them have been around a long time and aren't really that familiar with customer marketing, so they don't even know what questions to ask.
Yeah.
I mean, the thing I always say is, when was the last time an executive, you're the head of customer marketing, when was the last time an executive came up to you and said, hey, Irwin or Shyam, how healthy is our customer contact database? And my response is, well, they're never going to ask you because they're going to assume it's perfect because these are our customers. Why do I need to ask that question?
Yeah.
But they should be asking that question.
Sorry. A lot of what you're saying is hitting home so strongly. I can't even start to say, yeah, I mean, it's very common. You're right. I mean, executives obviously assume that things are in place and that makes sense. But then, so that's why the first part of what we essentially do is like a data test and tell them, hey, this is where life is, right? And sometimes, like I said, an example of the other customer who walked in with the point of view saying, hey, we only have 1.1 people per account, right? But typically we have to do that part where we go in and say, hey, listen, this is how bad things are, right? And then all of a sudden now everyone's all up and like, okay, tell me more, like how can we fix this, right? So 100%. I think
going back one thing, or let me interrupt, going back to the question 4, one thing I would recommend doing is take 200 names of your customer contacts at random, but not just like the senior people, like, people who are active, inactive, just completely random, and spend a day in LinkedIn, just yourself, and say, do they still work for the company? Do we have the right title, the location, etc.? And you'll know what shape your customer contact database is at the end of the day.
Got it. No, absolutely. I was just going to add to that, saying that, executives actually, so when we talk to executives directly, they always say, you know what, I want to stay in touch with my customers. I want to be in front of them, so I think some of our customers use Boomerang and otherwise to kind of, come up with this executive engagement program. So whether they're still in the job or they've actually moved on to the next one, right? They want to make sure that their executives have, I think it's connecting the pieces, which is the problem today, right? Like you said, the database is not there. And, the CXOs don't see that signal when somebody is either moving job or if there's a customer milestone. I mean, there are cases where, the customer just renewed for a multi-year deal. That's a big thing. But, it's the right time for you to say, hey, thank you for, continuing to support. It's a great partnership, we're excited. But that doesn't happen because, it's looked at very transactionally, right? Like the CXO probably does not even know, or it's at best like a row number and something. So I think that activation component, like we discussed earlier, is super critical, to kind of make sure that the right people get that information at the right time and have a very crisp to say, hey, here's what you could do with this and here's what to go about, right? And I think with AI, again, like I said, that's one of our big areas of bet. And another question here. So it says, this is from Ant. He says, what percentage accuracy should the database be for you to feel confident with a customer marketing program? And
that's really an interesting question. Yeah. I think so one of the questions I asked in the survey is, can you rate the level of your segmentation?
Yeah.
And 60% said it was a 1 or a 2 out of 5.
Okay.
So in segmentation, you can segment a few different ways. You can segment by the title. You can segment by, how they use your product. Because somebody could be a CEO, but they don't use your product because they don't need to use your product, but they have a seat because once a year they might want to go in. So there's a lot around segmentation, which is a separate conversation. But, having a clean database allows you to do some of that segmentation. So I would argue that if you broke into 3 tiers, your sort of main point of contact, that's more the business person, the contract holder, the main point of contact should be at like 95% above accuracy.
Yeah.
Your admins, your advocates should be about 90% accuracy. Your active users mean, they're a user, they've gone in the past 30 days, but they're not a key contact. Those should probably be about like the 85% accuracy. I mean, they all should be 100%, but it's a lot of work.
Yeah.
And your inactive users, like they got a seat 3 years ago and they've never logged in.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't even worry about those guys, to tell you the truth. But I would say those should be, if you're going to clean it up, you might as well clean them up. And that's probably more in the 70% accuracy rate.
Got it.
Not all customers are the same.
Makes sense. Yeah, absolutely. I think we're getting a few more questions, Irwin, right? So I think this is exciting. So I'll just add on to that. So this is Kristen. Kristen says, love that you led discussing common challenges with customer data. Customer data hygiene is a huge barrier to accurate attribution, effective personalization, etc. And without the right plumbing, most of these marketing activations can't be properly measured. So our question is, what department typically holds the key, which is the influence and resources, to tackling the database problem? Have you seen more success with sales operations versus customer success operations or marketing operations? I mean,
that's one of the questions. That's one of the questions in the survey is who owns the responsibility for it. And I haven't looked carefully enough at that data. So you're going to have to read the report when it comes out in March. And hopefully, if you're on this webinar, you'll fill it out. It's anonymous, so it's not lead gen from me. So you can be completely anonymous. But in that survey, I asked who's responsible: customer marketing, customer success, or customer success ops, rev ops, everybody, nobody.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, my feeling is that if the company has a CS ops group, that is probably the best group to pay attention to the health of the customer contact database. I think rev ops will do some, they'll clean up duplicates, frankly, but they're not going to go into who's their employer, etc. So they want to be clean. They define clean in a slightly different way. And customer marketing generally is not somebody who owns that. I think customer marketers should step up. If nobody owns it at the company, a way to raise your profile within your company is step up and say, I'm going to do that. I just heard today somebody said support keeps track of that, which seemed crazy to me, but as long as they have somebody, and if they do a good job, then it's great. So my sense is that CS if I eyeballed the survey, because we've gotten a fair amount of results already, but customer success was probably the number one, rev ops was number two.
I think at least to add my 2 cents to that, right? I think when I've seen that, it probably comes down to the tool as well. So in my experience, what happens is, where are you orchestrating this entire campaign out of, right? So I've seen companies do that out of Salesforce. I've seen companies do that out of Market. Obviously, there are purpose-built tools for doing this, right? Some people, sometimes are against that. So I think eventually, I believe that, at least from my experience, it also comes down to a factor around where are you orchestrating this, right? So if it is Salesforce, then probably it is who owns Salesforce, which is another big question, right? In some companies, it's RevOps, it's IT, doesn't matter. But at the end of the day, they might look at the problem differently. Like for example, they might look at it as a data problem. They might look at it as a data hygiene problem, right? But eventually, if the point is that as a company, we want all our customer data, basically key contacts and everything to be in Salesforce, then they're on the job to kind of make sure that happens through whatever means and fashions, right? But sometimes I've also seen, and that's another side question, right? Like I've also seen customer marketing programs being run through Marketo or some of the other tools, right? So then basically that becomes your place to, not to go too deep, like up to you if you want to go deep into the tools, but I'm just saying, like, what's been your thing? Like, is it out of Salesforce usually, or is it orchestrated out of, the likes of a Marketo, or is it some other thing? Like, what have you seen to typically happen in most companies?
Yeah, I mean, my take is that the system of record should be the CRM, because a lot of other people in the organization will have access to it. Marketo, only one group has access to it, whereas a lot of people have CRM licenses. And you may not think, for example, I talk about legal. You may not think legal would care about it. But if I was in legal and I had a summer intern, I would go to them and say, hey, could you here are the states that we're concerned with. Here are the countries we're concerned with. We want to make sure we're in compliance with email privacy regulations. Do we have everybody's state? And could you look at a few hundred people and see, do we have it right? Because maybe we picked their location 5 years ago. So that's why the CRM, I think, is the place where that should be kept. And the Salesforce administrators are not going to deal with the hygiene. They'll delete duplicates. They're not going to go in and figure out where's the employer.
Right. So
that's where somebody else in the organization needs to feed it. And you obviously can do a bulk upload into Salesforce. Once you clean it up, that's what they'll do. Is like, what the Salesforce admins will do is they'll create new fields for you and they'll do the bulk upload. Other than that, somebody else has to do the rest of the stuff.
So somebody has to understand the difference, right? I mean, like, look at the data, understand the qualitative aspect of it, right? Not just this. Okay, if I can give an award, this award goes to this question. Christina, this is one of my favorite questions. I already brought it up, but I would love to kind of spend a little more time on this. So Christina asks, and this is to you, Irwin, right? So what is your view, Irwin, about the role that customer marketing for B2B can have for retention to increase the ARR and increasing ARR, right? Do you have a best case to share or top 3 things that we should do or not do to be successful with this?
Well, first thing I'll say is, have the database be clean, because that'll help. But I think it's that alumni program. I think that's something that most companies don't do, because it's one of these things that touches a lot of different people. We talked about waiting. I think stepping up and saying, can we do a pilot of tracking people who've left their employer and see if we can close them as a new logo? So I think, and without raising lots of expectations, but basically, let's just do a pilot on this. And there's a lot of things. There are salespeople in place, there are BDRs in place. There's a lot of in place already. So it's not like you have to, you're just being the lead generator. By identifying those people for whoever. But it's a lot of people have touched. The other one is on the. I don't know any company who's cracked. No company I've ever been at has cracked the code on cross sell. Partially because everyone talks about upsell, cross sell like they're the same. Yeah, but we know that cross sell is different. But they generally it's put onto the salespeople. You need to cross sell. Yeah. And and they're then going to their client and say, who should I cross sell to? It's like, that's not the client's job to be a lead generator for you. You should be able to identify who are those people that have the titles at the companies that you want to cross-sell into, nurture them, etc. And then once they've shown interest, then let them know that we're working with your colleague at another division. Yeah. But all these companies do it wrong. They want their clients to do the cross-sell for them. And that's just never going to happen, because if I was a client and I was a VP of some department and somebody came to you like, who else should I be talking to in your company? It's like, I'm not telling you. It's like, that's not my job. Exactly. So that's the other area, I think, by having clean titles that at least you can get that into the funnel as well, into the account managers, by giving them names. Like, here's people you might want to start reaching out to and, nurturing them, etc.
Yeah. I think because
I don't know if you can just automate that and just start blasting emails. I think that's much more of a one-to-one.
Yeah, it has to be delicate, absolutely. I think I was just going to say that, because we, obviously this is part of what we do, in fact, very, very central to what we do, right? The first product we launched. I can also share some publicly available data with one of our customers that we did a few months back, right? Which is, this is a company called Narvar, which is one of our early customers at Boomerang. And, in the first year of implementing what you calling alumni program, champion tracking, right? I think in the first year, the alumni, right? Like the people who past customers, they were able to influence almost 400 opportunities between existing and renewals and everything. That's like a 17 million influence on pipeline and around a little above $1 million in influenced revenue. I mean, the kind of impact is massive, right? And it's just not this. The reason I also want to highlight is because something that we speak a lot with our customers is, this is not a once and done thing. I mean, it's very easy for you to look at this as a very tactical, not at all, because you see, like you said, you don't necessarily need this person who was a past customer to be your door in. It's always a great, if somebody moves into a company and there is a way for you to actually break open an account through them, perfect, right? But put it this way, maybe there is another conversation that's happening. Maybe there's an opportunity that has been created, which is now moved to a certain stage. You can use past customers or alumni for so many different things, like deal acceleration, back channeling, creating an internal business case, like getting intel, right? So I think, and obviously central to all this is the data, like you said, right? Obviously, if there's an executive, there's a different treatment. But let's say you have many users of your product that are in that company, right? I mean, you're just trying to create, there's no better way to establish yourself as a phenomenally good partner for a company by, instead of you telling it, getting somebody who has used your product and who's their current employee to walk up and say, you know what, guys, I see you guys are talking to this company. Feels like I've used them in the past and they've been phenomenally successful for us, right? So, I mean, the amount of things that you can get done is so massive. I know we are almost up on time, Irwin. I want to just close out with your final closing thoughts. I know we're speaking about future of customer marketing. I know there's a lot more to talk. It can, go for a whole hour by itself, but, I would love to hear your last, closing thoughts, and then, we'll wrap up this webinar.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, taking the updated enrichment off the back burner. Yeah. Stepping up and saying, we got to do this. And here are the reasons why. Here are the people it impacts. Second is begin to understand the other parts of the organization. If you're in demand gen talk to your customer marketing people. That never happens. Customer marketing always has to talk to demand gen. Go knock on their door. Say, what do you guys do? What can we do to help you? What do you need? I think that tech will get you a lot of the way there. What the work Boomerang can do gets you a lot of the way there. But there's still a part of it that's that human, understanding your company, understanding your customers, looking for the patterns, knowing the internal politics of your company. So, don't just say AI can do everything for us. AI can speed it up, but you still need to own it and not just clean up a database, but what have we learned from the cleaning up the database? What can we do in the future? How do we leverage this moving on? And then final thing is take my survey, because I'm rewriting this report and I'm trying to get 75 and I'm more than halfway there. So during February, I'm working very hard to get people to do the survey. It's anonymous. So, you tell me who you are if you want, but this data, and I'll tell you, this is going to be a wake-up call. I've looked at enough data that this is going to be a wake-up call that, this is embarrassing.
Very excited about the survey, Irwin, and the report that comes out of it in March. And thank you so much for spending this time with us. I think a great discussion, a lot of really good points. I'm pretty sure there are more questions than answers here that are, what we asked. And I'm sure maybe another occasion where we can continue this conversation. But thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, I'm happy to talk to people about, see if I can help in any way, cleaning up their database and launching a repeat sales or alumni program.
Best place to reach you, LinkedIn, email, how do you want to?
Absolutely.
Okay.
You got it.
So you can find Irwin Hipsman on LinkedIn. And to the audience, thank you so much for joining us today. This was a fantastic webinar. We're looking forward to the next one. Cheers.
Thanks, Shyam.
Thanks, Irwin. Bye.